I am in Nova Scotia, climate zone 5B, on the south shore of Nova Scotia. So it's moderated by the Atlantic breezes, but it's also very wet. How do I know about fruit trees? I got involved in growing apples many years ago when I came in contact with Fred Jansen, who was one of the original founders of NAFEX, the North American Fruit Explorers, which was a group of amateurs, for the most part, enthusiasts seeking to preserve the old varieties of apples that were disappearing from both commerce and the world. Well, there are nurseries in Ontario that sell antique varieties, that sell old varieties, and there are a couple out in BC. But you're not limited to going to a commercial grower. You can grow your own. You can graft your own. And the important thing to recognize is that apples don't come true to seed. If you plant a seed of a McIntosh apple, you will not get a McIntosh apple tree. You'll get a seedling, which is tiny, hard, bitter, sour, virtually inedible. If you want to grow a McIntosh tree, you have to take a piece of McIntosh tree wood and graft it onto a suitable rootstock. And you can then grow your own McIntosh tree. Actually, it's remarkably easy. The apple trees are extremely forgiving of amateurish efforts. I teach a course every spring locally in grafting, and a number of other groups across the country do the same thing. You can, in fact, probably learn quite satisfactorily simply by looking at videos on the internet. But you do have to practice a little, and probably the most critical element is having a absolutely sharp knife. If you've got a really sharp knife, and you practice a bit on scrap sticks of wood, and look at the videos on the internet, you will probably get an excellent take. I taught myself 40 years ago at a time when we didn't have the internet to go to. And I got takes, 70, 80, 90%, right from the beginning. So I think, in fact, you can take comfort in the fact that it is not something that's all that difficult to do, and that the apple trees, at least, will forgive you. It's not quite the same thing with some other fruit. Nut trees are much more difficult to graft successfully, and you do have to be a bit more skilled. But if you're sticking to apples, pears, probably peaches, soft fruits, you can probably do your own grafting very successfully, right from a little bit of practice and watching somebody else do it. This ragtag group of enthusiasts that was, at least in part, fostered by NAFEX, the North American Fruit Explorers, have a vigorous exchange of grafting material. So we're all busily cutting scion wood of our chosen varieties, storing them away, and exchanging with other members of the group. And we simply send it across the country, stick it in an envelope, stick the now multi-dollar stamps on it, and send it across the country. It works very satisfactorily. The grafting wood, the scion wood, must be dormant, when you graft. So you cut it in the dormant season, send it off to your friends on the other side of the country who keep it in the back of the fridge until it's time to graft in the spring, once the rootstocks are coming back to life and the sap is flowing, and it will heal over the graft quite rapidly. Rootstock is hard to come by. We had a nursery out in BC that went belly up probably 15, 20 years ago that grew rootstock for the Canadian market. And he went out of business. And that was the last we had of a commercial source of rootstock in Canada. So what people now do is they go to growers who import rootstocks, because now we have to import all our own rootstocks unless we grow them ourselves. And that's a multi-year process. That's something that you have to commit to. You cannot get decent apples in the commercial market. If you want, well, look, the premier cooking apple in the world is Bramley Seedling. There is absolutely nothing to compare with a Bramley Seedling apple. It is an intense apple taste that lingers on the tongue for half an hour after you eat that last slice of pie. And there is absolutely nothing to compare with it. If you want a Bramley, and any of your British viewers will know what a Bramley is. If you want a Bramley, you got to graft it yourself, or you got to find somebody, an aficionado to graft it for you. You can get a Bramley from one of the specialist nurseries, or you can graft them yourself. Why would you want to do this? Because these are apples that are incomparable, and they are what a real apple tastes like.